Hello, my name's Eliott. I'm a mixing and mastering engineer based in West London, and this is the first video in a series on me building out my mix room. I've worked in a number of different rooms over the years, the majority of them less than ideal. We're talking like garden sheds, corners of bedrooms, in lofts. I've also had in my living room as well. As you can imagine, none of those were great spaces for mixing and mastering, which you need critical listening environment for. I got the job done with them. However, I bought my own place back in November and finally have my own space, which I'm going to turn into the best possible listening environment I can, so I can do the best possible work I can. I'm going to overlay some footage of the room just so you can get an idea of what we're talking about here, but the length of it is about 3.5 meters long and the width is about 3.3 meters long, which, if anyone knows anything about room acoustics, is less than ideal. It's pretty much a square, and so we're going to have some standing waves to deal with for sure. It's 2.4 meters tall, there's carpeted floor, and we've got a mixture of different walls around us. The wall with the window on is obviously brick leading to the outside. The rest of the walls are stud partition walls. They're not particularly soundproof, but they do have insulation in. This might come in handy actually, as I imagine a lot of the bass energy will manage to pass through the walls, which would be great, but we'll obviously be dealing with some serious standing wave issues in here. So yeah, anticipating that. The brief for this room is, number one, it has to sound good. Above all else, I need this to be the best possible listening environment I can get it to be. So that is why I'm going to spend the time and the money to make it as good as possible. Number two, it has to be freestanding. Even though I own this flat, I don't want to put a load of holes in the wall, which I then have to sort out later on whenever we move. I'd like ideally build freestanding panels that I can then take to my next space, wherever that's going to be. One, that will save me time in building the future studios. And two, it will also save me money because I can just take these panels with me as I go. Number three, and I think as importantly, it has to look good. A huge part about being a creative is having an environment in which you feel comfortable creating in, and it sparks those creative juices. I've been in a number of studios which are dark, gloomy, mould on the walls. It's not a fun environment to work in. So I'm going to make this look as good as possible, and obviously that translates nicely to Instagram and YouTube. And finally, fourth of all, it has to be cost effective. I don't want to sink a load of money into this and it not work out, so I'm going to be strategic about what I do. There's going to be quite a few iterations, I think, over the years as I dial in this room, but to start with, we're going to get the basics done as good as we can for the least amount of money possible. So now you know the plan for the room, let's jump into the computer and I can show you what we're starting with. So in order to know what we need to do in this room to make it sound as good as possible, we need to understand its current state. We have this room mode calculator here, which you can find at amacoustics.com. Just put in the rough measurements of this room, and this is the information it's given me here. So we're looking like we've got a node around 50 Hertz, just above 50 Hertz as well, 71 Hertz, got a couple around 100, and we're also looking at some big ones around 150 as well. That's just looking at the low end. If we look at here, the bolt area, so the so-called bolt area indicates an accumulation of good room ratios, and as you can see where mine lands, outside of it. Like I said before, we're in less than ideal situations here, but this is what we have to work with, so we're going to make it happen. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to Room EQ Wizard. It's an amazing tool which measures your room in a number of different ways, which I'm going to show you now. So here we have the frequency graph of my room as it currently stands. It is far from ideal at the moment. We've got a big dip here around 60 Hertz, which is problematic because that is right where the kick drum hits. So I'm missing all of that in my room. A big problem we have is the difference between the lowest peak and the highest peak. If I measure there, we're currently looking at around plus or minus 6 dB in this room. Where we want to aim for is about plus or minus 3 dB. That's a fairly acceptable room to mix in. As this stands at the moment, that is not the case. So what is this telling me? This is telling me we need some serious bass trapping in this room. At the moment, I've just got these 6 panels around the room. They are your standard 400mm wide, 100mm deep rockwool insulation. I've bought 3 big bags of that, and my plan is to kind of wrap around this mix position, which I'll show you in a bit. Hopefully that amount of insulation will deal with the bass issues that we have. If not, and I'm anticipating that we might have some further issues, I'm going to experiment with hanging mass-loaded vinyl behind the panels as well as further absorption. Moving on, it goes down quite a bit and evens out once we get from around 300 to 1K. It's fairly flat, We've got a bit of a peak between 1K and 3K, which again, that's where the vocal lives, like that slap bang where the vocal lives. And so I'm currently perceiving that to be quite a bit louder. So one thing I am finding as I'm mixing here and I'm referencing outside of the studio, the vocal's quite quiet and oftentimes isn't as present as it needs to be this is pretty much why that's happening. And then we've got a gentle slope up from about 3k up to about 9k, after which it rolls off. I imagine that's to do with how reflective the room is, especially around the mixed position. I haven't got anything above on the clouds. There is a lot of bare wall around here as well. So again, encapsulating this kind of mixed position, that we should be able to smooth that out. We're going to jump over to the RT60 graph now. Now RT60 is how we measure the reverb time in the room. This, I'm actually quite happy about the current state of the room. It's pretty flat from about 500 Hertz upwards. Everything's under 250 millisecond delay, which is a really good starting position. All of the issues we have, and as you probably imagine, is below that. We've got a huge reverb tail around 50 Hertz. That's nearly half a second. That is unacceptable in this room. So again, the bass trapping that I'm hoping to put in here should resolve that, but we'll see. Interestingly, the shortest reverb time, around 100 Hertz, but that's where we had a few peaks as well. So you can see how, even though you might have peaks in your frequency curve in the room, the reverb times can be different. So there's going to be some playing around here to try and get the best possible listening environment. But anyway, I'm not too unhappy about that. Hopefully what I've got planned will alleviate these issues. So we're going to look at the waterfall now of the room. And actually, instead of the waterfall, I'm going to go to the spectrogram. I find that a bit easier to look at. So what this is the reverb times going up the y-axis and frequencies along the x, and then the red peaks here are the loudest or most amount of sound pressure level there. So again, around 100 Hertz as we expected those peaks, 140, 150, 180, we expected those. If I zoom in though, this is scaring me. Right here, 60 Hertz, we've pretty much got nothing going on there. And again, that's exactly where the kick lives, so less than ideal for mixing. Our 50 Hertz issue here is showing plain as day, again reaching over 500 milliseconds there, so that needs some serious sorting out. Overall, what I'm hoping is, in the after graphs that we're going to look at, is that everything's going to be a lot more red along those peaks. It's going to be evenly spread. We're not going to have these big chunks of red and these big gullies of green and blue. So although it looks fairly smooth in terms of consistent in its reverb times, we're going to look to get that a lot better. So now that we've looked at Room EQ Wizard and some of the issues we have, let me show you my plan into SketchUp. So I've made the room in SketchUp, and as you can see here, this is the door on the right, the window over there on the left, and this is my mixed position here, and this is my plan. I'm making 4 large panels, all the same size, about 2 meters 20. I think I'm going to do about 2 meters 10 actually, by 122 centimeters wide. 4 of them, so 2 behind the mixed position, and then 1 to the left, 1 to the right. These are going to be 100mm thick, but I'm actually going to make the wood 150mm thick. So as I mentioned earlier on about possibly hanging some vinyl membrane in the back as an experimentation into controlling the bass a bit more. So again, forward thinking about this, I'm not just going to make these panels and then stick with them. I'm going to iterate, make changes, hopefully improve on them. But this is my general plan as it stands. The 6 panels I've got around the room at the moment, I'm thinking 4 above the mixed position, possibly all 6 depending on the space here. And then at the back of the room, I haven't put them in yet, but if I flip it round, at the back of the room we're going to have, they've got my sofa here, and I'm thinking of putting 2 bookcases here from IKEA and stuffing them with more Rockwool insulation and also some books on it to act as diffusion, as well as bass trapping on the back. All of that, I imagine, should do a good job. So there you go, there's the room, there's the plan. Let's see if we can turn it into a really cool space. You can probably hear just on the microphone there how reverberant this room is. So we've got a lot of work to do for sure, and you can see Room EQ Wizard how much of that low end that we really need to tame. But by packing out this position, putting a cloud in, those bookcases on the back wall, I'm sure we can turn this into a really, really good sounded space. One thing I'll be interested to see with adding all of that acoustic treatment in here is whether or not it's too dead. In an attempt to tame that low end, we'll probably suck a lot of the life out of the room as well. So we might end up experimenting with some diffusion as well, but we'll see how that goes. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know there's a lot of talking in it and a lot of information, but if you've got anything that you think I've missed, please let me know in the comments down below. I don't claim to be an expert in this at all. I've just done my own research online, watched a lot of YouTube videos as well, and cobbled together this plan. So if you think there's anything I've missed, please let me know, and hopefully we can make this the best sounding room possible. If you like this video, then please consider liking and subscribing. There's going to be a lot more in this series. We're going to build the frames next, then we're going to install them and sweep the room with Room EQ Wizard, figure out if there's anything else that we need to do, i.e. more trapping, more acoustic treatment, and I'm going to do a few more things in this room to make it look and sound as good as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.